What's going on, guys? I'm Ravi Abuvala. I went from law school dropout and taking care of my dad with stage 4 lung cancer to building a $1 million a month business in under 3 years, and I am one of the passionate few. I've actually never gone this in depth of how I went from just a few years ago living in a basement, taking care of my dad, going to chemo and radiation, to at the age of 27 building a multi-million-dollar a month business. And I gave you guys really actionable steps on how you can build something really similar for yourself. And I hope you guys enjoy this episode.
Thanks so much for being on the show today, Ravi.
Appreciate you having me. Thanks so much, Omar.
Absolutely, man. So now a lot of people in the online marketing space kind of know what you do. You're known as the systems guys. You have your program Scaling with Systems, helping entrepreneurs all over. But there's a lot of people out there that really don't know what you do or kind of any of the success you've had thus far. So before we get into your story, can we get a little context about what you do present day?
Yeah, sure, of course. First of all, thanks for having me on here. I do appreciate it. I've been a big fan for a while. As far as what our company does, Scaling with Systems, we essentially help companies scale using client acquisition systems. So like paid ads, sales funnels, salespeople. We set all that up for companies so that they can really massively focus on scale without having to worry about, finding new clients every single month, and if they're going to be able to have the cash flow in order to keep their business open.
And at 27 years old, you built this business at this stage, and it's growing rapidly. But take me back, man. When did you start entrepreneurship, and where did any of that begin for you?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't really have the rags to riches. I was selling baseball cards when I was 5 years old story, like a lot of people else do. I was actually always going to be a lawyer. That was the main focus my whole life. People ask me why. I think I watched every episode of Suits and Law and Order, and that was what I thought that I wanted to do.
Right.
And also, I come from an Indian background. So in my family, you were a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. That was the three things you could be. And I thought lawyers were the coolest. So that was the main focus for a majority of high school, college, and after I graduated college, my dad actually got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer about 4 days after I graduated college. So for anybody that's watching this and knows anything about law school, you have to study for what's known as the LSAT, Law School Admission Test, in order to get into the school of your dreams. And so for me, I was going to take a year off and study for law school, doing that LSAT, and then take it and get to one of the top 5 schools in the nation, which was my dream school. And a few days.
Were you good at school?
I excelled actually really well at school. Yeah, I was really lucky at that aspect of it.
Did you enjoy it, or was there a lot of resistance? Like, fuck, I don't want to do this.
No, I actually really did enjoy it. And I don't know. I don't exactly know why I was good at it, but I was good at it. I think that reading and writing has always come really naturally to me. Like, one of the things I do for my clients really well right now is copywriting. That's probably the thing that I'm the best at, to be honest with you.
For people that don't know what copywriting is,
sure. So it's like writing persuasive text on what's now sales pages, used to be sales letters, used to get in the mail, and convince people to do things that you want them to do, such as, subscribe to your YouTube channel or buy this offer, buy this product. So I became really good at doing that, but that was because to be a lawyer, you had to know how to read and write really well. So I was developing that skill set early, and then hopefully nobody at Florida State's watching this right now, but I actually started my first business ever was I started a paper writing business for my fraternity brothers in college. So I would write their entire 6-page, 10-page paper, and I would charge them $100 a page, and then it would be an extra $100 if I got an A, extra $50 if I got a B. But that was my first realm, my first taste of the entrepreneurial life.
So that was literally the first business venture you ever did.
Yeah, and it was tax free also, so I didn't do any taxes.
Straight
and
cash flow.
It was crazy. And I would just stay up the night before, consume the information, and then write the paper and send it in for them. And I don't know if I'll get in any trouble for saying any of that now, but I guess I don't have to work for anybody else. But that was the first time I ever started realizing, okay, wow, people are paying me for this value that I'm giving them in the marketplace, and it's a skill set that I'm good at, and somebody's willing to pay me for it because they might not be good at it themselves. And that was my first taste of, okay, this could be something I do full time.
And then right when you graduate college, you said your dad's diagnosed with cancer. How old are you at that stage?
23, I think, 22, 23, yeah.
And do you have any money at this stage? Are you
Absolutely
thinking
not.
about entrepreneurship? What's going through your mind when your dad gets diagnosed?
Yeah, so I didn't have any money at that stage. Like I said, I was really blessed that I had a bunch of scholarships when I went into college because I was good at school, and then I was making that money on the side. But, I was blowing it in college like every stupid college kid would at Florida State. And
how much were you making doing that, give or take?
I made probably an extra, well, once again, hopefully the IRS doesn't watch this, But I was probably making an extra like 6 to 10 grand a semester just writing papers for people. So
oh wow, so you had a full-on operation.
oh yeah, I mean it was insane. Like it started with just my fraternity brothers, and they would be sending me papers, and then other fraternities would hear what I was doing, and so then they would send in their papers, and like it was all cash or Venmo or Cash App, and I like ended up writing an insane amount of papers. I mean, my senior year, I can't even tell you how many. I was writing a paper 4 or 5 times a week. It was insane.
Holy cow! And you didn't have people; it was just you doing it.
It was just me doing it. Yeah, I know. Ironically, I'm scaling with systems, but yeah, for me, it was just me doing. Well, I mean, with all due respect, I couldn't think of anybody, at least in my inner circle, that would be, even if I paid them, willing to write a paper and actually could write it well as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then your dad's going through that situation. What toll does that take on you? What do you go through at that stage?
It was kind of insane. So my dad was living in Atlanta, Georgia at that time. And like I said, I was studying for law school. And so I was planning on like taking a break off. I used to work beach chairs in my hometown of Destin, Florida. And it's a pretty chill job. You like chill on the beach all day. You bring people chairs if they wanted. So that was like my dream. And then, you know, life just works in mysterious ways. And he got diagnosed. He had nobody to take care of him because my mom and dad are separated. And so I moved up and I moved in with him, which is what every single college graduate wants to do, is move right back in with their parents, right? And I moved in with him and moved into like essentially the basement and started working and studying for law school, I don't know, 5 to 8 hours a day. And then I was also taking him to chemo and radiation for 5 to 8 hours a day as well on top of it. So it was a surreal experience that took about 12 months of my life. And like during that phase, I just started, like you said, the toll that it took on me, the biggest thing that it did to me was start to question, is this law thing the thing that I want to do, or is it the thing that everybody else wants me to do? And I read a really great book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, which just totally shifted my perspective. And I was like, wait, I'm doing all of this because I'm so worried if I try to do something else that everyone else is going to be disappointed in me. But in reality, like if I did something that I didn't want to do, I would just be disappointed in myself, and I would almost hold resentment towards the people that really just wanted the best for me and sent me to law school. So that was like the first switch for me to be like, maybe I should just take a breather here and not just dive straight into 3 years and $250,000 in debt.
And how long ago, like, was that situation? Because that was pretty recent, right?
Yeah, I'm honestly really terrible with years and dates, but it was literally the year after I graduated college. So I was about 24, like 23, 24, sometime around there was like that 12 months that I spent. And I went from, to be really quite frank with you, I'm a very transparent guy. I went from like partying and drinking 5-6 nights a week to just instantly cold turkey. I didn't drink for 12 months straight, no girlfriends, no friends, no texting, no partying. And it was like, wake up at 5 a.m. I listened to Les Brown, Tony Robbins, like for an hour in the morning. Then I would work out from 6 to 7 at the YMCA, take a shower, work on the LSAT from 7 to 9, pick my dad up, go to the hospital from like 9 to 5, drop him off, and then drink another cup of coffee and study until like midnight, and then wake up the next morning and do the whole thing over again.
Wow. Now, at that stage, are you thinking like, man, I got to get out of this law thing, and you're 100% going to do it? Or were you kind of like scared to tell him he's going through stuff? I don't want to disappoint him while he's going through cancer.
Dude, you like, literally nailed it. That's exactly what it was. I was like terrified to tell him. I was afraid what he would think. And
not
once
a good
again,
time. Yeah,
not a great time. But then you think in your mind like, well, when is a good time? You know what I mean? And like I said a moment ago, and this could be valuable to people that are watching this as well, I knew that they just wanted what was best for me. I knew that was the case, but the truth is, and this might be valuable, is I didn't know what was best for myself. So how could they know what was best for me? And I knew that I might resent them if I went down this rabbit hole and I just absolutely hated law school. And so I voiced to him that I was starting to get a little concerned with it. And we were talking about it off camera a second ago, but so he started setting me up on dinners with all these lawyers, like high shot lawyers in Atlanta, Georgia. And I would sit down at dinner and he'd be like, all right, so tell Ravi like why you should go to law school, how successful your life is. And he'd be like, why do you want to go to law school? And I'd say, I don't know, I just want to make money and everyone's telling me to go to law school. And they would look at me and they go, do not go to law school. And my dad's mouth would just drop on the table right there. And he'd be like, this is not going the way that I thought it would. So all of that kind of accumulated together for me to just one day have the guts to walk down the stairs. I still remember, and like just look at my dad and tell him I'm not going to law school. And I still remember he was like, you're throwing it all away. Because you have to keep in mind, I actually ended up taking that law school test and I scored in the top 10% of test takers in the entire nation. So I had, with my GPA and the previous internship experience I pretty much had my pick of litter for any of the law schools that I wanted to go to. And what I ended up doing instead was deciding not to go and then getting a job at an Italian restaurant serving breadsticks for about $2,000 a month while I figured this stuff out.
Oh man, so dad was disappointed.
Yeah, actually, I'm pretty sure that my mom, my dad, like nobody even told anybody what I was doing. If anybody asked what Ravi was doing, they're, oh, he's just figuring it out, or he's taking a gap year. And you got to keep in mind too that like I pretty much dropped off the face of the earth between taking care of my dad and studying for law school. I mean, I was looking back at my phone the other day. I mean, I probably sent maybe 20 text messages in that entire year. Like I was just totally off the map, 100% dedicated to studying and with my dad.
Were you doing any, if you don't mind me asking, like Adderall or any sort of supplements?
So actually, I wasn't in college when I was writing those papers. Yeah, I'm just getting totally transparent. I'll answer anything. When in college, when I was writing those papers, I was crazy on Adderall. Like I mean, I was doing Adderall every single day. It was insane. And then when I was doing that stuff, I wasn't, because that was actually the first I really started getting into like the discipline of the mind and like almost biohacking a little bit and figuring out like, okay, like what can I do to just have enough energy throughout the entire day? And realistically speaking, Adderall actually it gives you almost no focus if you have ever taken it. Obviously, I know people have prescribed it, but for me, it gave me no focus whatsoever. And so I ended up it was literally just coffee that I took and just did a lot of studying on how to study. And that was how I was able to do, 16 to 18-hour days between studying and taking my dad to the hospital.
And then where do you go from I'm going to do that to like, okay, I'm going to get into business for myself? Because you're making, how much is it, $2,000 at the
$2,000 a month working in an Italian restaurant, yeah. Okay, which you got to keep in mind too, right? I was like going to go to a law school, which was essentially guaranteed 150 grand a year after I graduated, to $2,000 a month. And so even I was starting to kind of doubt it a little bit myself, which is a little bit sketchy. But I think like maybe a lot of people that are watching this stuff, and maybe even on this video or other videos you see on YouTube, I saw an ad that I was targeted by somebody about, make money online. You can make this money running an advertising agency. And I still remember this day. I actually still have the DMs on my Instagram, because now I'm actually friends with some of the people I was DMing. But I would see these ads. I would go to these sales pages, which I now create for my clients, and I would look at the testimonials. And then I would go find those profile photos and their names on Instagram or Facebook, and I would friend request them, and I'd send them a message and be like, hey, did you actually take this program? Are you actually making 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand a month online? And every single person was like, yeah, it's legitimate. I am making this money online. And I think also, if you're not in this world that we're in right now, like, you hear $1 million a month, $500,000 a month, $100,000 a month, even $20,000 a month, you think that the person's lying or it's not real. It
sounds so far-fetched.
It's so insane online. These guys are 20 years old, like you're not Bill Gates, whatever else it is. It seems insane. But like, just like you, I know plenty of people that are doing even more numbers than what I'm doing. And so I think that's one of the things I love about like podcasts like what you have and social media in general. I know it gets a hard rap, but that allowed me to just see other people that were doing what I was doing and like doing what I wanted to do. And so I could figure out, okay, like, to be really honest with you, the people that I was talking to, man, they couldn't even put a sentence together in English. Like these people weren't even like the brightest people in the world. And so in my mind, I just was like, if they can do it, I know that I can do it. And so I bought into my first course, $997. And I remember sitting inside. So dinner service started at 5, but people didn't actually come in till like 6:37. So from 5 to 6:37, I would be sitting in the back room where they fold napkins, and I would just be AirPods in, learning looking at the course and learning how to do Facebook ads and all that. And people would walk by and be making fun of me. And it was just a really interesting part of my life where, here you are trying to grow and trying to reach this new level. And I don't want to be, not disrespectfully, but here's everybody else's mindsets at. And so when you're in that gap right there and you're not surrounded by people that are like trying to do the same, I think it's really lonely, it's really depressing, and it's really easy to fold up and quit. That's why I see most people giving up in entrepreneurship.
Right.
And I was just really blessed that I pretty much pushed through it and I was able to get to the other side.
How did you get your first client?
So it's kind of a funny story actually, and my girlfriend's probably going to watch this and get upset at me, but my the only girl I had talked to in like a year and a half since I graduated college was a young girl in Atlanta, Georgia, and her dad was a plastic surgeon, and he was based in Atlanta, ran a successful practice. And so we're sitting at dinner one night, and I'm like 3 weeks into this new online course, how to run ads online. And we're sitting at dinner and he goes, honey, talking to his daughter, do you know anyone that can like set up social media and run ads online? And before she even responds, I go, I can do that. And he goes, oh, you can? And she looks at me, she goes, oh, you can? And he's like, come to the office tomorrow, the next morning. And so I still remember I put together a 25-page proposal. We were talking on the phone about this originally. 25-page proposal. I audited everything about his website, his social media, his Instagram, his Facebook, his LinkedIn. And I was like shaking. I mean, I had to psych myself up in the parking lot before I go in there. I was shaking. I go inside of there. I was like, all right. And I started, and like within 3.5 minutes, he's like, okay, I believe you. All right, how much is it? I was like, it's $3,000 a month. He's like, writes a check, hands it to me, gets up and leaves the office. And like the office assistant director had to walk me out of the place. And I remember thinking like, wow, honest to God, I don't know what I'm doing right now. And this person just paid me $3,000. Like, what if I really invested time and energy into this? And that was the first kind of what I talk about a lot is called feedback loops. That was the first time where I was like, cool, I learned this skill set. This person paid me money. And if I just keep on doing this, I can just keep on earning money that way, which was how the business started.
Wow. And then how long till you get your second and third clients? Where does the confidence start building?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure, and there's something to be said there. You had the confidence to get the client, but not the confidence to fulfill.
Yeah.
And that's a gap that every entrepreneur has to start, right? Nobody's ready before. Can you just zoom in and talk a little bit about that and how to make that mindset shift? Because there's people that are kind of in that middle ground right now watching this, men and women around the world that are like, oh God, he's missing that chunk. That's the chunk. That's the missing link to get to the other side, right? To at least start the journey. Can you zoom in on that, on taking action in spite of the fear, especially initially, how important that is in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's honestly awesome that you asked that. One of my favorite quotes ever is action leads to insight more often than insight leads to action. Meaning like just do the thing and you'll figure out sooner or later how to do it. And one of my favorite things to do is actually, I honestly think I'm one of the best in the world at is launching high ticket offers, like selling before you create something. So actually getting people to pay you money before you've done any of the fulfillment. And I've worked with like Kevin Harrington, I've worked with Fortune 500 companies, like tech startups, and they spend so much time and energy on the fulfillment and the back end, like engineering, software, prototypes, that they don't even do any of the product market fit and figure out if people actually want to buy in the first place. So they could be years, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions in funding before they even try to take it to the marketplace, only to realize the marketplace doesn't want it.
Right.
So if you're watching this right now and you're like, I don't know how to do something, or I don't know, I don't know if I'm the best at it, I don't know if I'm going to be successful at it or whatever else, just do it. Just figure out if someone wants to pay you money and then take the money from them and then go figure out how to do it. I guarantee you, if I gave you $3,000 right now to run Facebook ads, you would probably be able to take that money, then go on YouTube and figure out how to run Facebook ads. It's actually not rocket science. And then worst comes to worst, and this is what I always told myself, because I'm not trying to scam people. I said, look, and this is what I told the doctor, I said, if I don't do what I'm telling you right now, I'll give you all of your money back, no questions asked. So I was like, at the worst case scenario, I'm gonna have to give him the money back, but I'll have learned a very valuable lesson. Best case scenario, I'll figure it out as I go. I'll actually get him results, and he'll continue to pay me. And he paid me that was one of my longest clients then. He paid me for 12 months at that point. And it was massive for my confidence booster on the back end of learning how to do it. But I think people massively overcomplicate like the back end, and they always want to get that perfect. And the reason, Omar, I think that's the case, is because it's so much easier to try to figure out how do I do the back end and how do I get client success and results without ever actually talking to clients than it ever is to walk up to somebody and say, I can do this for you, will you pay me money? Because in that instance, you have the opportunity for rejection. Because you might say, no, I don't want that. And then that's a rejection. So my brain's telling me, okay, instead of talking to Omar about what he wants, set up this 20-page proposal, get your website logo right, get your colors right, figure out everything on this side, learn Facebook ads, master YouTube ads, master all this stuff. And then in some undefined future, it'll be perfect time ready to then go approach you and you'll be ready to go at that point.
Yeah, and that's not how business works.
It's not how business works even a little bit, and you look at, I listen to podcasts all the time that just talk about some like entrepreneurs and some of the greatest people that we know. They were winging it, when they started their business, they had no idea. And I was listening to one the other day, how I built this with Guy Raz, and it was the founder of MailChimp, the email sending software. And
they
he
just
said,
sold it, actually.
Yeah, they did just exit it. Yeah, so they were doing an interview with him, and they said that he sat in a room with these Wells Fargo like CEOs and the board of Wells Fargo. And one of the guys got up and they were like talking about, I forgot exactly what they're talking about, but one of the guys got up, I'm paraphrasing here, and was just like, yeah, no, we don't actually know what we're doing here, or we don't actually know what's going on. And that's when the MailChimp CEO was like, that's when it hit me that nobody ever has any real idea what's going on. Everybody's just trying to figure it out as they go along. Exactly. And so I think when you are able to understand that, it gives you the confidence to then be one of those people that's also figuring it out as you go.
Yeah, one of the passionate few.
Exactly, very well said.
It's interesting you say that. When I interviewed John Paul DeJoria, a multi-billionaire, he's the founder of Patron Tequila, he sold it for $5.1 billion, Bacardi, as well as Paul Mitchell Shampoo and Conditioner, right? Not one, but two multi-billion-dollar companies. The guy was homeless at 37. And I asked him, I was in his office in Beverly Hills, and I asked him, I said, are there ever times where you look around and go, holy shit, like pinch myself that this is even real? He goes, Omar, all the time. I have no idea what I'm doing. But what happens is you just act like you know what you're doing, and little by little, your confidence will breed competence. And like, because you're inventing it. Because if you think about it, the reason you're the CEO leading a company, you don't know what to do.
Sure.
Nobody knows what to do. You're discovering new territory. So your responsibility is to uncover new territory and figure out what to do so that people behind you can kind of figure it out. Kind of like systems, right?
Exactly.
You go, you try things out, you figure out what systems work, what systems don't, you optimize and you plug in the formula. So he's like, waiting until you're ready will never happen.
Yeah,
I would have still been homeless.
And I think another really important point that I think we should drive home for people that are watching this is that we're not saying fake it till you make it. So
Right.
I'm not saying that lie and even get like jets and Lambos and like tell everybody you're successful when you're not. I mean, when I was first starting, I told that doctor, I said, look, I am figuring this out as I go, but like you have a benefit in that because you're not going to work in an advertising agency where you're one of 100 clients. Dude, you're my whole life right now. Like you're my whole future is riding on you right now.
Right.
And if you give me a chance, I will dedicate my whole life to you and I promise you I'll deliver. And if I don't, I'll give you all your money back. So I'm not saying if you're watching this right now, don't tell people that you're the successful person, you have all these clients. You know, there was a point when I was trying to do lead generation and I was working with real estate agents and they would respond back to me and they would say, hey, are you available this week? And I'd be like, yeah, let me check my calendar and see if I'm available. But they were the only person I was talking to at that point.
Right.
But I don't really recommend that. I think if you come out with transparency and you're just like, look, I'm figuring this out as I go. You're part of the beta program of it. But because you're part of the beta program, there's a money back guarantee. It's discounted and you get my full undying support and attention. People respond to that much more than if you're like, oh, no, I'm successful. Give me the money first.
And you took that mindset, and that's how you started getting your second, third client. How does that happen?
Yeah, it was actually not. It was funny. So I got that first client, and they were a client for me for 12 months. And so as soon as I got that first client, I was like, boom, this is it. I'm successful. Like this is what's going to happen. And the ironic part of it was, you have to keep in mind that everybody thought I was going to be a lawyer at this point. Even my parents were like still thinking I was going to be a lawyer. They didn't understand what I was doing. And so I didn't want to go to my market, my warm market, my friends, my family, and say, hey, I'm running ads online. If you know anybody that needs ads online, let me know and I'll run ads for them. Because what I wanted to do, and this is probably going to hit home for a lot of these people that are watching this, I wanted to be like so successful and so perfect at first, working with strangers before I went to my friends and family and then, worked with them so that way they could have confidence in working with me. Also in my mind, I had this idea that I was just going to like roll up to my local bar of all my friends and family that they used to make fun of me in like a Ferrari and be like, suck it, I'm successful now, you know what I mean?
Right.
And realistically, what actually happened was I ended up going, instead of to my warm market, which is what I recommend people doing now, is I went to total strangers and I tried to sell them on ads. And people buy for two main reasons, right? They trust you and then they trust your product or service. And because people did not trust me because I was going to total strangers and I had no case studies because I just started, they didn't trust my product and service, for 8 months I made $3,000 total in new business that was coming in, profit for my company, which comes out to like less than $10 a day. And because of that, I almost actually folded up shop. And the whole time I'm acting like the entrepreneur, buying drinks from my friends, putting it all on my Discover credit card, acting
Big
like
baller with your $3,000 a month.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And nobody had any idea, right? I'm $10,000 in debt.
Right.
And I started actually pulling back out law school applications. And I was thinking like, I might actually have to go back to law school at this point. And maybe I was just kidding myself that I could be an entrepreneur. And luckily, and we talked about this a little bit off camera, but luckily I started learning how to actually build client acquisition systems so that like I could have outbound messages be going out to, my target market every single day, 300, 500, 1,000 of them. I could start running ads. I could start creating sales funnels. And very slowly, I actually went to a mastermind in Atlanta, Georgia. And that's when I learned how to build like client acquisition systems and not just like fulfillment systems. And that's when it flipped for me. And I made a post on my Facebook. I got my first few clients from that. And then I did $10,000 in 10 days after that. Within 45 days, we had our first $30,000 month. And then like from there, it was just off to the races.
And how long ago was that from today? Like
That was 2019.
So that was like literally 2-3 years ago.
2 years ago, 2020, 2 years ago.
And so there's a recurring theme here I want to zoom in on. When you bought that $997 course initially, and when you invested in this mastermind, you weren't exactly rolling in the dough. So it was a significant investment for you.
For sure.
What was the mindset of investing in it, even though you were scared? Because I'm sure part of you was like, do I want to do this?
I think the cool thing about it, and I think this is where people mess up when it comes to investing, like everyone wants to invest in crypto or real estate or whatever else is the next sexy thing to invest in, but I took a chance on myself. Like, I didn't know anything about crypto, I didn't know anything about real estate, I didn't know anything about stocks, and I had no control over that stuff. But on me, I have full control over. And one of the great things about that law school period in my life where I was studying for the LSAT was that I learned massive discipline at that point. You know what I mean? I learned how to literally just be motivational speeches, working out, going to the hospital and studying until 12 o'clock at night, no friends, no drinking. So I learned how to just be in full grind mode. And because of that, I think that gave me kind of a hidden power when I got into the entrepreneurship journey. But as far as when I started investing more into myself, I spent that first $997 and I got $3,000 back within 3 weeks. And that was $3,000 recurring. So that's arguably $36,000 a year. So I spent $997, I made $36,000 a year, and it unlocked for me this whole new world. So then when I had the opportunity to go to this mastermind, there was two things I was trying to do there. Number one, I was really lonely at that point in my life because I had nobody around me that was doing online business. And all my friends in my hometown thought I was like one of those cam boys on those websites that we shouldn't talk about on this show right now because I was making money online. And they had no idea what I was actually doing. And so I would be like talking in these Facebook groups with other people like, yeah, ClickFunnels, Facebook ads, Zapier, YouTube ads. And then finally we had the opportunity to like all meet up and meet together. And so we ended up deciding to meet up at this mastermind, and we all got together. And I also was trying to learn, okay, the people that were there were doing 30 grand a month, 50 grand a month. And there was one guy doing 100 grand a month in his agency.
Which to you at the time sounded like
was
impossible.
Unbelievable. You know what I mean? It was like, holy, this people can make this amount of money. And the guy was just a few years older than me. And I was like, I don't even believe this is real. Let me go see this to believe it. And then I remember when I was in person at the event and he was talking about this client acquisition systems, I sat down with lunch with him, and that was like when I started talking a little bit more about what he's doing. He gave me some advice, really actionable stuff that kind of put me on the right path. But for me, it was a lot of money for me at the time. But I think the cool thing, once again, if we go back to that theme of the feedback loop, I had already put money to myself. I'd already made an ROI from it. So in my mind, I'm thinking if I spend a little bit more money, I should have a little bit larger of an ROI at that point. And that's why every single time I invest, like I spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in masterminds and communities because I always know in one way or the other, I'm going to get the ROI back from that.
So you go to the event, you go to the mastermind, you learn a bunch of stuff, you come back, and then your income goes from 10 grand, 30 grand. How does it escalate? What are you learning at this stage?
Pretty much the main difference for me was I was figuring out, okay, if I can build, like two main things I learned was number one, if I can have somebody else do prospecting for me, and I can have it so that when I'm awake, when I'm asleep, when I'm hungover, whenever, whatever else happens, I have outbound messages going on and I have people that my calendar is being full, then I'll never go hungry a day in my life. And so that was actually when I was first introduced to virtual assistants. And I actually hired a virtual assistant. Her name is Mel Jane. She's still working with me 3.5 years later. She was my first ever employee. And I hired her and she just did 500 outbound messages every single day to real estate agents saying like, hey, I run ads, we guarantee results, you want to get on the phone? And that was the first like turning point for me that I would wake up in the morning and I would just take sales calls from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then from 8 p.m. onto like 10 or 11 p.m., I would just be doing the fulfillment work, like just the actual deliverables of what I promised them. And then I'd wake up the next day and do the exact same thing. And that ability to have a full calendar and focus on like the client acquisition side of things was just, it gave me the confidence I needed. It gave me the cash flow I needed to eventually start running ads, hiring salespeople, and really like starting to build out a company. But it just goes back to what we talked about earlier. If I had spent all the time trying to perfect the ad side of things, or like the fulfillment side of things, I never would have gotten off the ground. But to the credit of people that are like, well, how do you take care of your clients? The other thing that really allowed us to rip a hole in that space was that I was getting leads from my real estate agents, but the issue was that they weren't closing those leads. And they were saying the leads were garbage, but then I would actually pick up the phone and call the leads and they'd be like, oh, we never got a call from anybody. Like we want to know more information about buying homes. We never got a call. So I knew my real estate clients weren't calling these leads. I knew that we had to call the leads in order to actually get results for them. So I did something that nobody else in the market did. It's super normal now, but I was one of the first companies to do what's known as an ISA team, inter-service agent team, who in between my client and the lead, they picked up the phone as soon as the lead came in within 5 minutes and pre-qualified them. You know, are you a buyer, seller, pre-qualified, time frame, all that stuff.
So you included this in the offer for
inside
clients.
the offer, and nobody else was offering that. And all of a sudden we went from leads to pre-qualified booked appointments in your calendar.
So you're adding more value into what you're offering.
Exactly. And we increased the price. So it was $1,500 a month, including advertising spend. I added this ISA team in there that costed me $500 a month per client. I charged them $1,000 extra, so I got an extra $500 cut off the top of it. So then it's $2,500 a month, which once again, people told me nobody would pay $2,500 a month for an advertising agency in real estate, and nobody else was offering it. And we just absolutely tore a hole in the industry and very quickly hit a seven-figure run rate. And that was because of the combination of the outbound prospecting. But inside of that outbound prospecting messaging, I was saying, hey, we're not getting you leads, we're getting you qualified booked appointments. And the call center was based in the US, and those two things together allowed us just to take off.
And you started doing 100 grand a month, in excess of 100 grand a month right away.
Yeah, it was pretty darn quick. And the nice thing was, the only employees I had was 2 virtual assistants, One of them was doing the outbound prospecting, and then one of them I taught how to do Facebook ads. So I taught them how to set up the campaign, how to connect it to our ISA team so they could pre-qualify them, how to set up the ClickFunnels account, all of that stuff. And so I was doing 100 grand a month at 95% profit margins. I mean, it was like unbelievable amount of money. I always joke around. I say that's kind of the richest I've ever felt in my life, because I was still measuring myself by like the people I was hanging out with before, right?
Yeah.
So now I feel like I'm always very poor, but that was the richest I've ever felt. And then that was actually when I started like really enjoying my life. I moved to Colombia for a half a year. I started traveling to Spain. I went all around the world, and I was kind of living that 4-hour work week life where I was just like hopping on a few sales calls here and there, and then still netting over $100,000 a month.
Listen, we'll be back to the interview in a sec, but first, I wanted to let you know that if you're enjoying this podcast, and I really hope that you're enjoying this podcast, then I think you'll absolutely love my brand new and 100% free Facebook group for entrepreneurs just like you who are passionate about what they're doing in the world and really passionate about sharing their products, services, building their brand, and really creating that brand on video that can really last. How does this work? Well, it's very simple. All you got to do is click the link in the description below right now and fill out 3 quick questions to join the 100% free Facebook group so that you can learn all the 6, 7, and 8-figure strategies that entrepreneurs are using all around the world in present day and real time today that you can implement to grow your brand and business using video and telling and sharing your story that you're so passionate about with your customers and ideal audience in the process. So again, all you got to do is click the link in the description below now, join the Facebook group, and there you'll learn all the strategies 100% free. So that's it. So, in business, most entrepreneurs have a hard time taking advice from other people who are not inside the business, and they're in their own head a lot. So when is the right time, as you see it, to actually start building a team and start sort of scaling out, whether it's getting an assistant or a virtual assistant? What's sort of Ravi's rule of thumb when the right time to hire is?
Yeah, so I just literally shot a YouTube video that went in depth on this, but I think that people do one of two things. They either A, hire way too quickly and like hire a massive team. I see this all the time in startups in the SaaS world where they have a bunch of funding and so it's not their money, so they essentially piss it away. Or on the other side, they like try to retain control for the entire time they're trying to build their business, and they're afraid to delegate it out to somebody because they're not going to do it as well as they could possibly do it, whatever else it is. And what I've learned is that, in my personal opinion, you should focus on the business just yourself and establish what's known as product market fit and make sure that the thing that you're selling people actually want. You should close deals by yourself. You should be the only person selling, generating leads, and fulfilling them for a very long time. Very long time is obviously relative, but the idea behind it is that, I hate that we're using the term all the time, but it's a good theme, is that feedback loop is when you are the only person doing sales, marketing, fulfillment, onboarding, someone tells you something and you can immediately add to the sales messaging, you can immediately fix the fulfillment. Like for me, I realized that because my clients weren't getting results and because I was calling those leads and realizing that they weren't calling the leads, within like a few days, I figured out I need someone to call these leads for them. I need to build the ISA team. And then the same day I was able to add that into our outbound prospecting messaging, our sales calls. And so it all happened really fluently. What the issue comes is like you start a business and you're so removed, I call it CEO syndrome, that like, I'm the CEO. I say this is how things should be. But then the marketing team creates it that way. Then the sales team is getting a different feedback from the marketplace based on the marketing. Then the client fulfillment team getting a different feedback from the clients that actually get onboarded than what the sales team said. And everyone's playing that game of telephone tag where one person says banana to you and the other person says orange at the end of it. And so in order to scale really quickly and be profitable, you should do all of that yourself in the very beginning. And then I think there's an order of operations, right? So exactly the way that I do is what I recommend other people doing. Leads and a booked appointment are the lifeblood of anybody's business. So for me, once I knew I had a scalable offer like ads for people, then I was able to delegate out the outbound messaging and have somebody else do it. And people always tell me, and you had a great point, like, what if someone can't afford it? Oh, I can't afford an assistant, I can't afford that. Like, realistically speaking, if you actually know what you're doing and how to leverage a team member, you can't actually afford not to do it. And the thing that you're thinking is money out of your pocket, I can't afford it, but there's an opportunity cost to trying to do everything yourself. So if you can only send 100 outbound messages a day and you can only take 5 sales calls a day and you can only onboard 3 clients a day, if you hire someone to just do the outbound prospecting, they could send 1,000 outbound messages a day. Or you hire a salesperson, sure, you're paying them 15%, but you could take 15 calls a day versus 5 calls a day. So you're missing out on money by not hiring people, but there's a right order. I think outbound prospecting is always the first thing to hire. I think the second thing is going to be client fulfillment and client success so that you can keep retention high, churn rate low. And then the next thing after that, I think as a salesperson, salesperson so that you can remove yourself from that whole every single day craziness, like trying to take sales calls until you pass out. And then at that point, it becomes fun, in my opinion. You get to start doing awesome stuff like I'm doing on this podcast right now. You start hiring a director of marketing, you can hire a sales team leader, director of operations, and then you actually own a business instead of being owned by a business.
You're an owner, not an operator.
Exactly.
And then when it comes to product market fit, you talked a lot about that. Can we zoom in just for a little bit? Because there's a lot of people watching who maybe they have a successful business, but they feel like they've hit a glass ceiling, or maybe they're ready to, but they don't know. Maybe they haven't, we've seen it explode online. People have expertise and they want to teach people how to do it, but they don't know how to sort of package it or put it in a box. So what advice do you have for people about how to gain product market fit if they're in a step 1, step 2, step 3 kind of phase or iteration of trying to go from either restarting a new offer or starting from scratch, and they want to figure out, do people actually want what I have? There's so many programs and courses and everybody has advice. People get overwhelmed by that complexity. What's Ravi's step-by-step formula from somebody doing $1 million a month in their 20s?
Yeah, so I think that the number one thing to look at, first of all, is like congratulations, because you're actually asking yourself the hardest question that any entrepreneur can ask himself is like, do people actually want what I'm selling? And I think people are so bullheaded that, and I've even had to realize there's a few times where I've launched something that nobody wanted, right? And there's nothing worse than spending a lot of time and energy on something only to figure out that nobody wants it, which is why I talked about selling something before you create it, and then you can figure out how to create it afterwards. So recognize that you're awesome for figuring out that you need product market fit, because it's the most important thing. There's no sales funnel, there's no outbound messaging, there's no hire, there's no marketing message that is going to fix no product market fit. It's just not going to work. So once you identify that you actually do need it, then I think the easiest way to do it, in my personal opinion, is interviews. That's my favorite way to do it. That's how I recommend my clients do it as well, where you pretty much go to 10 to 15 people in the industry that you want to work in, and you go, hey, cool, Omar, I've been following the podcast for a while. I love everything that you're doing. I'm thinking about helping podcasters monetize their podcast or make more money doing podcasts. Do you mind if we hop on a 30-minute interview where I just ask you a few questions about what you're noticing inside the podcast market? And I actually have a client of mine, Kevin C., who left a 9-to-5 job and is now doing $100,000 a month doing this is exactly what he did. And you hop on 10 to 15 interviews, and then it's super casual. And you say in the message, Omar, I'm not going to sell you anything. If I try to sell you something on that call, you have my word, I'll send you $500 if I try to say anything on that call. And what happens is you get on the call and it's like a sales call without actually going for the sale. And you're starting to ask them things. And there's a great book out there called The Ultimate Sales Letter that I recommend everybody reads. But you start to ask questions such as, what's your biggest pain points? What keeps you up at night? What are some trends in the marketplace that you're seeing right now? And then one of my personal favorites is, what are you currently paying for right now that you absolutely hate or that you wish was better? Because if you can identify that, you're paying for it because you want this problem solved and you're not getting that problem solved. So you're telling me that if I can solve that problem for you better, faster, cheaper, then you'd pay me to do it instead. Yeah, that makes sense to me. And then at that point, you have 1 or 2 options. Keep on going and doing your market research interviews. And what you'll notice, and we have a Google Sheet for our clients, is a trend. There's a massive trend. If you're staying in the same niche, there's a massive trend inside of there. And if you see that trend happening, then you can come back to all of those people that you did the interviews with and say, Omar, first of all, I appreciate the time that you gave me doing those interviews with you. It was incredible. I actually learned that every single person I spoke to that's at your level in the podcast game had this exact same problem. And I've actually learned how to solve it. You got 15 minutes where I can hop on a call and walk you through what that process looks like. And then you say, yeah, sure, we've already built rapport, why not? We get on the sales call and just no high ticket sales, no pressure tactics, just a super organic way of being like, look, I came to you guys first humbled. I had no idea what to do. I talked to 15 people. Everybody told me this was the pain point. I've actually learned how to solve it. If I could solve that for you for $3,000, you're already paying someone $5,000 for it. And I guarantee you that you're going to have results or your money back. Would you be interested in me doing that for you? A lot of times people say yes. And then you do it. That's one part of product market fit. So I have the actual person pay me money for it. And the second part of product market fit, which I see everyone in the online world forgetting, is actually delivering results. So like you paid me the money, and then if I was actually able to do what you paid me for, because if you don't do that, that's just scamming people, which is what people are doing online right now. If I actually do what you paid me for, at that point, I have product market fit. Because now I have something the market wants, and I have something that I can actually deliver to the market. And then boom, now that you have that, you get your first case study. And I have it's something called the roadmap to $1 million. And it shows step by step how we've scaled hundreds of companies to $1 million. But it always starts, the first thing is, do you have a case study? And once you have a case study, that's the best way to confirm product market fit, because it shows somebody has trusted you, shows that they can trust you, and it shows that your product or service actually delivers what you're promising. And at that point, you essentially have what's a scalable referral where I get a case study from you, I can send that to 150 people. It doesn't take any energy on your part, but they all get the value of what essentially the transformation I gave for you. And that's how you can really dive into scaling a business.
Yeah, and then you litmus test it so you know you have upward mobility with it.
100%.
When it comes to why you went into real estate initially and you targeted real estate agents, what was it that made you go in that niche? Did you explore other niches? Did you kind of get stuck? What is it that made you go there versus somewhere else?
Yeah,
I was value in there.
So I had that plastic surgeon client. I was doing a dentist. I was doing essential oils, multi-level marketing. I mean, anybody that had a credit card, I was like, yeah, sure, I can do this for you at this point, right? I'm still trying to make my business work for me.
Right.
And that was also one of the things that was really handicapping me, was not niching down and getting a bunch of case studies and results in that one niche. But essentially what happened was the area that I lived it's Destin, Florida. It's a beautiful area in Florida. I mean, everybody and their mom's a real estate agent. Right. And so like my own warm market, they would see me starting to post some case studies and testimonials online, and they'd be like, hey, can this work for real estate? Can this work for real estate?
This is Facebook.
This is Facebook mostly, right?
Yeah. And how powerful is Facebook for sharing results?
Massive. I mean, I think once again, the social media gets such a bad rep, but like if anybody on here right now that is client research interviews, if anybody on here right now is thinking about doing product market fit, and you just say, hey, I would like to interview 10 real estate agents. I promise you I'm not going to sell you anything. Does anybody know real estate agents? Tag them down below, or just shoot me a message if you're one. I almost guarantee almost everybody in here could get 10 interviews tonight, right? No questions asked about it. But most people aren't willing to leverage their network like that.
Right.
So
or they feel, nobody's following me.
Yeah,
I don't have it.
That's another great one. No one's following me. So the gentleman I was talking about, Kevin C., he was like, there's no podcasters that are following me. Like, I run a podcast, but I don't have podcasters following me. And he ended up posting it on his Facebook, and he ended up doing $12,000 the first 10 days of launching this. Had no idea what he was doing. Still hadn't created anything, but he did $12,000. And what happened was, have you ever heard of the 7 degrees of connection?
Of course,
exactly. So the idea was that people that were following him and friends with him knew podcasters. So they were tagging him in that post. He was doing interview calls with them. And then at the end of the calls, excuse my French here, it was kind of like blue balls a little bit, because they're like, okay, you just dug into my pain points for an hour and a half. You showed everything that's wrong with this industry. Like, well, can you solve it? And you're just like, I mean, yeah, I actually think I can do that. Like, if you're willing to pay money. And so a lot of times those interview questions can lead to sales. But yeah, the social media aspect of it is a huge part of how I started, and I was able to get into it. But a bunch of my friends and their friends were all real estate agents in my area. And so I would get some success. They would then tell their friends, and I would get more success. And that just started building and building to the point that I realized if I just stayed in real estate, I got all my case studies in real estate. I could not only keep my outbound messaging the same, I could keep my sales calls the same, I could keep my sales funnel the same, but even more important than all of that, I actually created, and this is pretty funny because I ended up closing down the agency now, but the actual fulfillment of what people were charging me $2,500 a month for took about 7 minutes to set up, and I just had a virtual assistant do it for me. Like, they just literally followed, and all they did was the same copy and paste Facebook ads campaign, and all they did was just change hi Austin to hi Atlanta to hi Denver. That was the only thing they changed based on what the onboarding form was. And so anytime I had to take on somebody that wasn't a real estate agent, then I had to come down from my 4-hour work week life and build out this Facebook ads campaign, which I just didn't want to do. So I was like, let me just stay in real estate. And I scaled that to, I mean, we had 430 active real estate agents at one point. We were doing hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in the agency space.
So that's where you really learn the power of systems.
Exactly.
Versus just jumping around trying to sell stuff. Now, your program and what you teach people around the world how to do, and people can check out your YouTube channel where you give out free value all the time. I know you got a new plane, so you're probably going to be creating some content out of there, which we'll dive into. But how important is systems for a business? Because a lot of people don't talk about it, right? It's not very sexy, although it's so essential. Although I know a lot of the content you're creating is making it sexy. But can you talk about, like, kind of high level, how you took that sort of experience and those experiences and then realize, there's a lot of people out there that struggle with systems more than anything.
Yeah.
Dive in high level.
Yeah, so the funny thing is, like, and you and I talked off camera a second ago, you were like, did you have limiting beliefs around creating a business around scaling, or systems was your question, right?
Yeah, because it wasn't sexy. It's very odd.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. And I've actually never had that question before, which is a great question. And I guess I didn't really see it that way. What I saw it was like I was giving people back time, and I was giving people more money, and the way that I was able to do that was through systems. So for me, I didn't see it, but what happened essentially was I built this company. I mean, within 12 months after the thing clicked, we were doing hundreds of thousands of dollars a month.
And are you tripping that a year and a half ago, you're like,
all the time. I mean, it's still wild. I mean, like,
What did your parents say when they saw you make your?
They still don't even, so a quick little sidebar.
Someone to law school.
Yeah, a quick sidebar actually about that. So my aunt, and she loves me. She watches all my stuff. So hi, Aunt Pretty. But she'll laugh at this, but I still remember I got on Fox News. So like I was really making waves in the real estate space because of that qualification center, the ISA team that I was doing. So I got on Fox News, and the day after Fox News, I was on cloud nine, man. Everybody was messaging me. You know, you have that dopamine hit. Everybody, I was posting on my Facebook, Instagram. I still remember this day, my aunt calls me. She's Indian as well, and she's like, congratulations. And you know, I'm doing hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Like I had in my mind, quote unquote, made it. And I said, congratulations, guys. So when are you going back to law school? And I was just like, oh my God, like this is, some people will never get it. And I still, you know, with all due respect, my mom tells people that I'm like a young Tony Robbins which is not what I am. So I just don't think that, I don't know, that generation, whatever, they don't really understand it. But yeah, all the time, dude, like, I mean, I bought a plane yesterday. You know, that's a crazy thing in my mind as well. A year ago, I didn't think that was possible. But yeah, I definitely still pinch myself sometimes around that.
And then when it comes to systems, because that's obviously what built a lot of that, can you like dive in and share a little bit about, you know, when you talk about systems, what are the sort of categories that allow this type of scale to happen?
Yeah, so like I said at the beginning, it's really focused on client acquisition systems because
there's a lot of, and I don't mean to interject.
No, go ahead.
But there's so many overlapping things to entrepreneurs, right? Especially when it's new, it's kind of scary. So can you just talk about like the syntax of the order of priority when it comes to building systems?
Yeah, so kind of it's the same as the order of priority that we talked about around building a team as well, right? So as soon as you find product market fit and you're able to start like delegating out outbound lead generation, I think the first thing you need to systemize is client acquisition. Because if you don't have that figured out and your client acquisition is relying on how you're feeling and your ability to get up and do outbound prospecting, cold calling, whatever else it is, it's going to fail very quickly because human beings, we're not very reliable people. I'm sorry if you're watching this right now, you think you're very reliable, but we're just not very reliable people. I know I sure as hell am not, right? So I wanted to build it so that whether I was up or not, whatever was happening, I could have appointments coming in my calendar. And then if I had a sales guy or gal, I could have them closing appointments. So whether I was working or not, I wanted money coming into the business, which seems like, you know, I think a lot of marketing online seems like everybody talks about it. But even when I started this a few years ago and for some of my first clients, nobody was really talking about it. And for me, it came really naturally. And people were messaging me that same mastermind that I went to. There were people that mastermind that then a year later, I'm doing $100,000 a month. We're still at that point that they were at that mastermind. And so they're messaging me like, yo, how did you do that thing that you did? Like we were at the same mastermind at the same level and now you're doing this stuff. I was like, oh, you know, it's pretty, like I just hired a virtual assistant. I just did these outbound, like it's pretty simple. And so what I started doing was I started hiring virtual assistants for my friends, building outbound messages for them, building sales acquisition channels for them, and then placing them inside of their companies. And they started seeing same growth I did, 10, 30, 50, 100 grand a month inside their companies and all these different types of industries.
I want to zoom in real quick.
Yeah.
When you talk about getting virtual assistants, like a lot of people struggle because they're like, well, what website do I go to? How do I test them? How do I know if they're good? It seems as you're like kind of sharing your story that like everything you try just plugged in and working, connected. What's the trial and error process with VAs? How do you mentally, because it seems like you move 100 miles an hour. Even I was talking with one of your guys off camera and he was saying, you know, one of the things about Ravi is that he just moves fast. So how do you move fast in a world where you're building teams and maybe the first couple of VAs are not the most efficient, not the most effective? How are you testing things to optimize? Or are you just kind of stringing things together, moving fast and in the process iterating? What's your mental approach to that?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I should say is that it definitely wasn't all like peachy roses, everything was working well. Yeah, I mean, like just so everyone's watching this, so I told you a second ago, like we can talk about anything. I had a lot of fuck ups in my business and I made a lot of mistakes. I had a lot of refunds, you know, a lot of problem clients, you know, I had problems with virtual assistants. It was never smooth sailing, right? And if anybody tries to sell you that online or whatever else it is, it's total bullshit.
So there's no way around that. You just
you're definitely, now there's things that you can do that makes your life easier. So for example, at our company, one of the things that we'll do, so we've placed over 2,000 virtual assistants in the past 2 years. So we have a 30,000 square foot facility in the Philippines where we train virtual assistants on how to do outbound messaging, cold calling, qualification, you know, all of that stuff so that they can set appointments for our clients. And then we place them for our clients. So there's things that you can do and there's certain websites you can go to, whatever else it is, to get better virtual assistants than you did if you were just like yelling from a rooftop, I need somebody to set appointments from me.
Can you recommend any off top? Just
yeah. I mean, so I don't want to shameless plug my company, but we definitely do it as well. I mean, I think the idea is not exactly where you get the virtual assistant from, it's what you give them. So like if you just hired anybody, I don't care if it's a virtual assistant, it's a college graduate, or it's a PhD from Harvard, they're only going to be as good as the systems or the training material that you give them, which is why when I talk about, you know, you finding product market fit first and you doing that outbound messaging first, the reason why the virtual assistants worked for me really well and why it kind of was like first VA, we're off to the races, was because I was already doing stuff that was working. I had already done that market feedback and iteration, and I was like, hey, if you send 100 messages to real, so what I was doing is I was scraping email addresses from Zillow Premier Agent, because those were real estate agents that had hundreds of 5-star reviews. They were paying Zillow to be on that website. And so I could literally find their name, then I would Google them, find their website, scrape their email, and then I would send them an email that said, hey, I saw you on Zillow Premier Agent. I can get you 10 times the results of Zillow for a quarter of the price. Respond back to their phone number and we can talk. And I pretty much was like, if I send 100 of those messages out, I'll get 10 people to book an appointment and I'll close one person on
For a sales call.
For a sales call.
Yeah.
So then when I hired my virtual assistant, I said, cool, all you do is follow this process, and you send 100 of these out, and even if you do a terrible job, you might be able to get 5 booked appointments, but every 2 days I should be able to close one of those deals. So the important thing is not, I think that's a mistake people think, especially in the very beginning. At the point that I'm at right now, there's a great book called Who Not How, but at the point that I'm at right now, I do hire who's, which means that, like, I might hire somebody, like I hired a tech guy recently who understands coding and stuff that I'll never wrap my hand around even a little bit, because we're building custom solutions. At that point, I'm hiring who's and I'm paying for who's. But when you're coming to a virtual assistant, for you to go to a virtual assistant and be like, hey, I need you to set up a whole outbound messaging campaign for me and do enterprise level sales. And they're like, it doesn't matter who it is, they're not going to understand it. So it's important to have what's known as a standard operating procedure, or even just a Loom video or some kind of tutorial video that says, hey, I've done this already. Here are the results that I've had. Even if you get 80% of the results as good as I am, you'll be able to dedicate 100% of your time, and I'm only able to dedicate 10% of my time, so it should balance out evenly. So the idea is that the actual systems are set up in place first before you hire that person, because if you try to hire that person and then you try to stitch together those systems, you're essentially in what's known as a clusterfuck, where you don't know, is it not working because the system or the messaging doesn't work, or is it not working because this virtual assistant's not doing a good job? So like inside of our program, we'll place fully trained salespeople, virtual assistants, even operations people inside of our client's company, but they have to actually do a few things first. So they can't get a virtual assistant as soon as they join us if they don't have any kind of client acquisition system set up first. So we'll help them set up a client acquisition system, and then we'll train the virtual assistant on how to do it, and then we place them with our client.
That makes sense. And I'm sure you've seen it too, where you've seen people who are like super brilliant but not have success, and it's really coming down to their systems. In your experience coaching and training, hundreds or even thousands of students at this stage, what's the number one common denominator you see where most entrepreneurs fuck up or kind of limit their own scale, shoot themselves in the foot?
Oh, wow.
I'm sure lots of smart people inadvertently are holding themselves back. You've seen patterns at this stage. What's the most common pattern or two you see?
I think the two that I'd see most, like, that's why when you said it earlier, I looked at the camera and I said congratulations, is the product market fit phase. Because like you could probably even do 50 to 100 grand a month without product market fit, but you are like forcing sales at that point. You're like a grind. And I know this is going to sound cheesy to people that are watching this, but when you actually do have an offer that works and it has product market fit, you could like sneeze and you could generate $10,000. Like if it actually hits the marketplace well, you couldn't not sell it if you didn't want to. Like people are, and so if you're watching this right now and you're like grinding to sell, like, oh, my cold messaging isn't working, my sales are not working, then it could be that you don't have product market fit. And so once again, like I said, I have literally worked with SaaS companies, like startups that we've taken and exited, that come in tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in product dev and a massive team. And I have to look at them in the eyes and be like, I don't think the marketplace wants what you've just spent the past 3 years creating. So the product market fit is probably the first thing. And I think the second thing is building a team. I think that there's this idea around, like, there's a sexy one-person millionaire idea behind it, and like it's doable. I made my first $1 million with just myself and a virtual assistant, so it's totally doable to do it. But if you're actually looking to really scale and like hit the 8-figure mark, 9-figure mark, then you have to hire a really good team. And I think the mistake that people make with hiring a good team is they either don't have the systems in place when they hire the person, or the second thing is that they always, it's unfortunate, but they always say, it's your fault. You're such a bad VA. You're such a bad salesperson. Would you get it together? And then they go through 5 or 6 salespeople, or 5 or 6 directors of marketing, or 5 or 6 client fulfillment directors, and no one ever takes a second to be like, is it me? Like the common factor in every single one of these people is me that's not delivering. So one of the things that we do in our company is called a 90-day performance review. So every 90 days, we're at 34 employees inside of our company right now. Every 90 days, I sit down with all 34 employees back to back on a 30-minute session, and I get feedback from them on how I'm doing as a leader, how the company's doing, how their role's doing. I give them feedback as well. And that keeps me from kind of getting, like I talked about earlier, that CEO syndrome, where I'm just thinking like, oh, you're just not doing a good job because you're just bad at your job. And I can actually realize that maybe even as a systems company myself, I might not have it all figured out.
What for you at this stage do you struggle with the most? Is it limiting beliefs? Is it, because I'm sure you have plans to do $100 million in business. But what are the things you struggle with present day, just so that a lot of the audience can see that Ravi isn't this like perfect machine that just knows what to do, right? Because there's a human side of it. So could you share some of that kind of?
Yeah, it's funny. One of my sales team leader, I had my event in Miami a few months ago, and like I was eating a pizza one night, and like he's like, "You eat pizza?" And he's like, and I guess I do sometimes put this persona on, but no, I'm very much human. I eat ice cream. I'll eat pizza. Like obviously, there's a great book called The Slight Edge, so I really do focus on like 1% better every day. But I make mistakes, things go wrong. So I think that's a really valid question. I think probably the two main things that I struggle with the most, definitely limiting beliefs around what's possible. Like I think this online space that we're in right now, once again, first of all, to do $1 million a month is absolutely insane. I have friends who are doing 2, 3, sometimes even $4 million a month. And so I think that some of us, I'm not going to say myself, but some of my friends are pioneering how much money you can make in this space, right? It's like, you know as a lawyer how much money you're going to make. You know as a doctor how much money you're going to make. But online selling information, like, there's not really a follow this person because they've done this before and made this amount of money. So I think the limiting belief number one is around like how large I can actually take this to in the way that it's presently at right now. And the other thing I think that every great company struggles with at the 8-figure mark is talent. I think finding, cultivating, retaining talent, right? We're at the level where we're paying people multiple 6-figure a year salaries to come work with us. And sometimes because this space that we're in is so new, I'm pulling people who have been working in 9-to-5, Fortune 500 companies who have never even seen what the online world looks like. And so they're taking all of their limiting beliefs, all of their cultural norms with the 9-to-5 world into the online world, which is a little bit different. So I think like the talent wise, once you get to that level where we're at right now, I would be lying to you if I said that we wouldn't struggle with that.
And then how about in terms of discipline day to day? Because I know you're pretty regimented with that. How important has discipline been to your success, and what advice do you have for people on that? Whether it's a daily schedule or a routine, like what for you have you found kind of works for you?
So for me, yeah, I think discipline's incredible. It's definitely the reason why I've gotten to where I am right now.
Have you always been like throughout your business?
Definitely throughout my business. I really credit it to when I was studying for law school was really when I was doing that, I had to follow a schedule. I had no friends. Like I had to make sacrifices. So that really was the inception of discipline for me. It also taught me, I went from this party animal that was doing drugs and drinking every single day to cold turkey, none of that stuff. And I was like, I all of a sudden had more time, I had more energy, I had less brain fog. So I started realizing, and then, without trying to sound cocky, because I do try to not, but, what I've done in 3 years, by my standards, is impressive to me, right? And so in my mind, I think, wow, if I've done this and I've stayed on this every single day for 3 years and following this discipline, what happens if I do this for 5 years? Or what happens if I do this for 10 years? Or what happens if I stay on this for 20 years? So that's the motivation for me to keep on going, is just like that limiting belief that we talked about a second ago, what actually could happen if I kept on doing this every single day? But as far as like recommendations, if you're watching this at home and you're like, how do I stay disciplined? I have a great video on my YouTube about my morning routine, but I really do believe that if you can cement your morning routine and you can cement your nighttime routine down, then you can kind of have some kind of semblance control of what's in the middle. And so for me, I have a pretty strict morning routine. Like even when I'm traveling right now in San Diego, I've done it every single morning that I'm here. And so doing that every day gets me in state, gets me aligned, gets me focused, and then I can go throughout the whole day, whatever the world throws at me, I deal with all the shit that everybody deals with. And then nighttime, exact same thing, nighttime routine. And then once I'm done with that, I can wake up the next morning and feel like I'm back in control again.
What, if you don't mind sharing, what's your wake up time, sleep time, and what are those routines?
Yeah, so I'll rip them through really quickly. I wake up at about 5:30 every single day.
Every day?
Every day, yeah.
7 days a week?
Sunday is maybe 6 o'clock. Yeah, Sunday 6 o'clock. Yeah, but
live on the edge.
Yeah, well, dude, I don't know. On a kind of a somber note, one of my really, really close friends just passed away recently on a head-on car crash, and he's 30 years old, and I don't know, life's, it's, with my dad, like life's too short, and I really, like, even being in San Diego the past few days, I love this city so much, and I didn't want the hours to pass. I didn't want to waste a second doing something silly, like, I don't know, getting high or drinking or something like that. I just wanted to like really enjoy it. So, but for me, I wake up at like 5:30, 6 every single morning. For me, my morning routine, I won't go through like, I obviously brush my teeth and wash my face, but for me, I dive straight into stretching. So one of my big things this year has been mobility. I used to power lift professionally, and I used to like always want, like, I was like, how much heavy shit can I pick up and put down again? And for me, what I wanted to start doing is like, all right, I want to be able to touch my knees when I'm like 60 years old. I want to be able to toss my kids around. So I've been focusing more on mobility. So I stretch for about 20 minutes every single morning. I have a yoga mat, I have a roller. Then I do about a minute practice of visualization where I see myself like actually as myself in 5 years, what I'm doing, what kind of watch do I have on my wrist, what kind of place do I live in, you know, I see my planes that I own in my hangar. And then after that, I write in my journal for about 30 minutes. I have a whole little routine about what I write in my journal, but I always practice gratitude every day. And then I meditate for like 10 to 15 minutes. I read for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then I literally, by that time, it's usually 6:30, and I'm able to just dive. My favorite thing to do, and I love the online world, is that at 6:30 in the morning, I can just sit down and pull up my computer. I'm blessed enough to have my office in my house, and 6:30 to 12, I'm able to work on my business, and like nobody bothers me, and I'm able to go leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else because I'm just not disturbed. And like I get 6 hours of work in on my business before most people are even like up and moving for the day. So that's my morning routine. And the nighttime routine, I did that video you watched of my girlfriend on my YouTube channel. She's like, there's like, what's the one thing, thing that she doesn't like about you? I'm so crazy about sleep. It's insane. And so for my nighttime routine, there's no blue light or any lights like this after 8 p.m. Everything turns red inside of my house. I have what's known as an Uller in my bed, so it keeps my bed temperature underneath my bed 65 degrees. My house automatically turns 65 degrees as well. And I read. I think the best medicine, people take like weed or they take pills, whatever else it is. I'm not going to say I'm a doctor or anything, but I think one of the best things that you can do is read a book. For me, if I read a book, I'm asleep in like 15, 20 minutes inside of my bed. And that's also one of the best times for me to get some of my best ideas. And then I pass out at like 9:30. I'm a grandpa. I go to sleep at like 9:30 every night.
So you get 8 hours of sleep?
Every night, guaranteed, yeah. And sometimes I'll get 7. And like I was even talking to him, for the people that aren't watching, my creative director's here. I was just talking to him the other night. Like when I'm in a different bed or if I'm at a different time, I can just like, I'm so sensitive to sleep, like a loss or deprivation a little bit now. But yeah, I think in the very beginning of business, I think it is important to grind, hustle, make it happen. But I think like you see people, I'm not going to call anybody out, but they're like, hustle, grind. You got to work 18, 20 hours a day.
I think we know who we're talking about.
I think we all do know who we're talking about here. But realistic, and actually I've heard a podcast for him where he's like, I don't do any of that stuff like anymore. Like there's a time and place, like seasons of your life. And so I think the very beginning of business is important, but I would be doing a disservice to my team, my clients, and my company if I was like that all the time, because my best ideas will come in my journaling. My best ideas come when I'm flying my plane. My best ideas come when I'm in the shower. But my best ideas come when I have a fully refreshed and recharged mind, and I can tackle really big problems in my business. And I guess the last thing I'll say about that limiting belief thing you brought up earlier, I think one of the limiting beliefs I had was like, unless I'm grinding 24/7 in my business, my team's not going to appreciate me. They're going to think that I'm lazy. My company's going to fall apart, whatever else it is. And in reality, if you actually listen to, obviously I'm not anywhere near the greats. If you listen to the greats, most of them, they're not like doing all the day-to-day bullshit inside their business. Most of them are working maybe in their business, maybe 1 hour a day. Majority of them are working on their business and not even like dealing with the ticky-tacky shit of your social media, Instagram, Facebook, phones, and they're just thinking and they're strategizing and they're making relationships like this right here, and that's opening up whole worlds of possibilities. So for me, being able to rest and then being able to focus on that and not trying to like grind an extra few hours of sleep has been massively important to my success.
What advice do you have for people about focus and how to improve it? Because a lot of people would hear this, and I'm just imagining men and women listening to this and going, okay, it seemed like he was in law school, so he was good at school. It seemed like he's always been disciplined. It seems like you have this. When a lot of people, I'm sure you've seen it, and there's a lot of people make $1 million a year with no discipline, right? What advice do you have for people about how to improve their focus? Any insights on that?
Yeah, so I think if you make $1 million a year, like, and you have no discipline, eventually you're gonna not make $1 million a year, right? Like anybody
or
can
whatever
come,
it is, whatever.
Yeah,
the thing
sure.
is.
But
yeah,
as far as focus is concerned, I think the two big things that pop out of me is number one, are you doing your unique ability that you absolutely love to do? So if you're doing something every single day that you absolutely hate to do, that's how you find a million ways to procrastinate. Like inside my company, if I have something on my to-do list and it's been like a week and I still haven't done it yet because I'm like, like I don't have to check Slack inside my company because I have an operations director for it. But I'm like, let me check Slack and make sure, oh, there's this fire I got to go pull out. Let me not do this thing that I don't want to do.
Right.
So the first thing you got to ask yourself is like, do I even want to do this thing that I have to do? And then, there's seasons in business. So like I said a second ago, you might not want to do research interviews, but like you actually need to do that in the beginning of your business. But if you're lucky enough that you get to a point inside your business, you can start choosing what you want to do and what you're great at. Like for me, creating content, creating products, and running ads, copywriting, that's what I'm really great at. So, and that gives me energy. So I get to focus on that. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, it's silly, but we don't have our phones on us, but like, man, that thing is the most distracting thing in the world. And stuff like TikTok and Instagram and all of that, it's training our brains to have an attention span of 5 seconds or 6 seconds or 10 seconds. And the reality is that businesses are built in long, boring, drawn out hours of you sitting alone at your house in front of a Google Docs Word or for like 10 to 18 hours a day. And you're building that, and there's no immediate reward when you do that. There's no dopamine spike when you're creating a sales letter. There's no dopamine spike when you're doing research interviews. And we're having these artificially created dopamine hits that come from Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever else it is. And so when our brains are trained towards, okay, should I build this sales letter right here that could potentially make my company $10 million over a course of 3 to 5 years, but I don't get any feedback on that for weeks, months, and maybe that feedback's negative? Or do I hop on TikTok where I don't even have to touch the screen and it automatically just sends me videos that are algorithmically proved to make me happier? What do you think the brain's gonna do? And I'm no different, just so everyone here knows. In the morning, there's something called activation energy I believe in. And like, if you make something harder to do, you won't do it. You make it easier to do, you will do it. So like, one of the things I do, I put all my TV remotes in my closet. I put my phone when I go to work in my office. I put that in my closet as well, because I know that if it's next to me, I'll just like casually pick it up. And then I just think that trains your brain not to be able to focus on like long-term things.
Makes sense. Now let's talk about the fun stuff. When did you get your plane and why did you get it?
So I bought my plane yesterday. Well, it's in escrow right now, so as long as it doesn't have any monsters underneath the bed, I'll buy it. But I bought my plane yesterday. I came here obviously to be on this podcast, which I'm super grateful for. And then I've been in the plane market for like 4 months now, trying to buy a plane. And 2 days before I came here, I don't know if it was a blessing from above, but because the plane market's insanely hot right now, something came on. It was hit every single checkbox that I had, and I called the guy. I was like, "Hey, I'm coming to San Diego just to see you. Like, hold it for me. I'll be there in 2 days." And so we went yesterday. We took it for a tour, and it was like everything that I ever wanted. We had an absolutely incredible time. As far as like why I got it, so I got my private pilot's license a few months ago. I did it in 3 months, and we were talking about a little bit off camera, but for me, I've been so into the business world the past few years that like there's actually days where like a Sunday, and I actually feel like I should rest my brain a little bit, but I don't know. It's like anchor memory. Like I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't actually know what to do with my time if I'm not building businesses. I really have no hobbies. Like I have nothing to do but build businesses. Yeah. And so I wanted to figure out something that I could do that was challenging and that also had utility, meaning like it would be valuable to myself or my business. And I actually don't know how I came across something, a plane, but I was like, man, you don't see a lot of entrepreneur pilots. Like you see a lot of entrepreneurs that own planes that get flown around it. You see a lot of entrepreneurs flying private jets, but you don't see an entrepreneur that owns a plane that he's flying as well. So it was like my way to be able to like, can I actually do this? Is it valuable? And like, if I get it done, then my reward to myself was to buy a plane. And so I got it done 3 months ago. I've been on some awesome trips since then, flying a bunch of rental planes. But if this works out, in 2 weeks' time, I will come back to San Diego, and then I'll pick it up and I'll fly it down to Miami.
You'll be soaring with systems.
Soaring with systems, exactly. Yeah, that's what it'll be.
And then a lot of what you've been doing recently too, with building your brand online and YouTube and all these organic platforms, you didn't do it initially. I'm curious, and this is good for entrepreneurs out there. How important do you feel building a brand is in present day, leveraging social media going into the future?
I think it's critical. I just think that people get so lost in it. So, in my personal opinion, I think you can do one of two things really well. I think you can build a really great business, or I think you can build a really great personal brand, because a personal brand is a business. I mean, right? Personal brand is a business on its own. So like I see a lot of times there's these YouTubers or other people that create these low ticket courses, whatever else it is, just because they built a brand and they've never actually built a business. And so sometimes that thing is not the best thing in the world because they've spent so much time building a brand. And I think people I think people get so lost up, like, I'm not famous. I can't launch a business yet. Nobody knows me. I don't have an audience, whatever else it is. And then, or they'll spend so much time building an audience when in reality, you can build a 6-figure business and nobody even knows you by just doing outbound messaging or just your friends and the family in the very beginning. And organic stuff, as you know, takes a little bit of time to actually hit and start seeing you've been doing this podcast for, I remember we talked about years, right?
4 years, yeah.
Yeah, so like, obviously it's an incredible success now, but when you started it was not an incredible success.
Right.
And so I think people are like, they try to focus on that in the beginning, but the way that I call it is I say it's like it's seeds. So what it means is that you plant the seed right now when you're starting your business. Like, you start shooting a YouTube video once a week or once a month, or start posting on Instagram once a week or once a month. But don't expect that to yield any fruit for weeks, months, and maybe even years. But at the same time, you're kind of cultivating that. You're also going out there and you're doing outbound messaging. You're doing, paid advertising, and you're generating this. And then there's something called a flywheel, where eventually people that are coming in from paid ads or outbound messaging is going to Google your name. They'll find your YouTube channel, and then they look at your YouTube channel and they go to your Instagram, and then they find your Instagram on your story, do a call to action, your sales letter. And it's this like, I call it the 7-hour rule, but by the time they get on the phone with you and your sales guys, they've consumed 7 hours of content, and they're like, Ravi, I feel like, I have this all the time when I talk to clients. I feel like I know you. I feel like we're best friends.
Right,
like, I know everything about you.
Yep.
And it's because I have both the organic and the paid ad side going at the same time. But I think people get way too locked up in the organic side, and they don't see the results that they want to, because organic takes a while to kick in. But once it does, I don't think there's a better client acquisition channel out there. I think that if you really get organic going, like I'm blessed on my YouTube channel, we have a good bit of clients come in from that. And so that makes us a good bit of money. I don't make it from the YouTube AdSense. I make it from people that are coming in from it. But I mean, I've been shooting 2 videos a week on YouTube now for a year and a half. I only have 15,000 subs on it. And it's not like I'm YouTube famous. So if I hadn't tried to have that be my main client acquisition channel, I would have been severely disappointed in how I scaled my business.
Yeah, and stuck, and it could have messed with your mentality.
Exactly. Nobody wants this, there's no product market fit, whatever else it is, which is why everyone knocks cold calling, cold emailing, whatever else it is, when in reality, there's no better or faster way than to walk up to somebody and say, hey, I have this thing, I think you're going to want it, would you be willing to pay me money? And you say yes, boom, I've closed the deal right then and there. But then over time, like what we help our clients do is build assets. And over time, you're like, oh, I think I want to do it, but how do I know that you're the real deal? I'm able to send you maybe a podcast I've been on, my YouTube videos I have, or even a video sales letter. I say, hey, watch this, watch these case studies, and then you'll know. And that helps shorten sales cycles, increase the amount of cash collected, obviously increase the amount of closing percentage, and lower in kind of friction that you have with the buyer. So they happen in unison and harmony together, but don't get so distracted by the content that you're like, I gotta shoot 50 things a day or I'm not gonna be able to scale a business.
Right, and it becomes kind of like digital real estate, where people get to know, like, and trust you long term. So in perpetuity, you can generate business and people know and like you. That's why, like, when you look at the big names in business, that's why so many of them are putting a focus on it, whereas in years prior they didn't.
There wasn't even and I think, I'm not getting paid
long term.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm not getting paid by YouTube to say this right now, but if I think about the values inside of my company, right? Long-term growth, compound growth, consistency, I don't see any other channel out there other than YouTube that hits all of that. Where YouTube,
100%.
You post one thing on there, that's the least amount of views that one thing is ever going to get in the entire life of that thing. Like if you type in LinkedIn Sales Navigator on YouTube, I'm #1 on that. I made that video a year and a half ago. And so that's only going to grow as time increases. Where Instagram or TikTok, you post something, it's gone in fucking 3 hours, 4 hours. You know what I mean? Yep. So YouTube is the ability, if you guys want to talk about like a social media channel to really capitalize on, is on that, because you have search intent where people are typing in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Who's this Ravi guy? Let's watch other videos. Oh, he helps people grow businesses. Let's book a time. And then also you have the virality component of it as well. And then you couple that with the fact that over time it's just going to be growing. You'll just be getting more views. And honestly, YouTube is our pillar for our content strategy. All of our other channels are just pretty much cuts of whatever happens on our YouTube channel.
100%. And that's why actually we started helping clients with it, because we noticed that, like, when it comes to YouTube, that channel can feed into everything else. So whether you have a Facebook group, you want to build a community, you want to send traffic to your organic stuff, when you look at the top people creating content, the ones that do it the most efficiently with systems are the ones that leverage it on YouTube and then can repurpose it across multiple platforms to generate and grow their business. Okay, last question I have before we wrap up here is, when it comes to the Ravi today, scaling past $1 million a month and growing your business, and you look back at the Ravi 5 years ago, or 4 to 5 years ago, who was struggling and looking for answers, hoping to one day build this multi-million-dollar business, what advice would you give, knowing what you know now, to the Ravi back then who was looking for answers, kind of broke, struggling? And the parallel is for men and women around the world at any age, who are maybe stuck and feel like whether they're just starting to have success or they feel like they've hit a ceiling, what's that missing link that you've seen most commonly to kind of help break through it? What would you tell the young Ravi that was looking for answers on how to make things work?
I feel like I'm on a TV talk show host right now. It's a great question.
Came on the right show.
I've never, I've never been asked that question. The immediate first thing that comes to my mind, because I unfortunately see it in my personal life, my family, my friends, and a lot of my clients, is I go back to that book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, but just not caring so much about what society or your family or your friends think. Unfortunately, I think that we care so much about what our parents think. And once again, I think our parents want what's best for us. People joke around and think that I hate parents, but I think our parents want what's best for us. Society wants what's best for you, whatever else it is. But I think that in the back of your mind, you might have this idea that I really want to be an entrepreneur, or maybe not even an entrepreneur. I really want to be an artist. I really want to be a violinist. I really want to do whatever this thing is here. But those people don't make money, or but my family doesn't, they wouldn't like me to do that, or people will kind of make fun of me for that. And I think that if you fall in that rabbit hole and then you don't do that thing, like for example, if I went to law school, I knew in my mind I would resent my father for the rest of my life because I felt like he was pushing me to be a lawyer. Once again, he wanted what was best for me, but I knew that I would resent him for the rest of my life if I didn't like law. Well, you made me go to law school. In reality, I made the decision on my own, but that's not how human beings work.
Right.
So I think the number one thing that people need, if you're looking at this right now and you're struggling and you want to do something, you're just like so afraid because somebody else is going to be like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, or you're throwing it all away, whatever else it is. You just realize that, like, if you actually sit there and take stock about what could potentially go wrong if you did this thing, most everything is fixable. Like, you lose your job, you can figure another one out. You lose some money, there's an abundance of money in this world. You lose some friends, you probably didn't need them in the first place. And so for me, I was blessed that I had no girlfriend. Remember, I was off the grid for a year. No girlfriend, no car payment, no house payment. I was living with my dad, no friends. Like, I had nothing going for me, which is one of the best things that ever happened, because when I started entrepreneurship, other than like my family, I had no real naysayers that were like, this wouldn't work. And so that allowed me to kind of keep on going with it. But I think the number one thing, if I was looking at Ravi 5 years ago, would be like, stop just being a lawyer because everybody's telling you to be a lawyer, and start trying to figure out what the fuck do you want to do with your life.
And go for it.
And just do it, because the worst thing that'll happen is it doesn't work out, and then you can just go right back to whatever you were doing before. But just wondering, I think, kills people. And it goes back to that quote that I said earlier, action leads to insight more often than insight leads to action. Just do the thing, and you'll know if that was the right or wrong thing to do in the first place.
Feel the fear and do it anyways.
There you go.
I love that. Well, cool, brother. And before we wrap up, we always play a quick game at the end.
Okay.
And the game's called First Things First. So the way the game works is I'm going to rifle off a quick word or phrase, and then you just tell me the first word or phrase that comes to mind.
Okay.
Does that make sense? It's like a relation game.
Okay.
The only rule is that you can't repeat yourself twice.
All right.
Make sense? So I'm going to rifle through 10. You just tell me the first word or phrase that comes to mind.
Okay.
First one is limiting beliefs.
Money.
Second thing, money.
I was going to say limiting beliefs, but time.
The mindset tip to make your first million.
Product market fit.
The biggest limiting belief you had to overcome to find success.
Abundance, that me winning wasn't somebody else losing.
The biggest challenge present day for you.
Finding and cultivating talent, team members.
Inspiration.
Tony Robbins, Les Brown, kind of that group of guys.
Fitness, working out. How it's affected your mental.
Totally transformed my life. It's a massive part of what I do, and I don't know. I guess the first thing that comes to my mind, I think that people make excuses as far as like, oh, I'm too busy to work out, when in reality, like, health without wealth is nothing, in my opinion.
Your airplane.
Just pure happiness and freedom.
The next 10 years of your business.
Acquisitions.
Passion.
Reading or my airplane.
And then the last one is what you hope people watching this interview around the world take from you and your story after this interview.
I think that a minute ago you said like he was good at school, he was good at this, and like some of these things come natural. But and I touched on it for 1 second, but I just want to be crystal clear to everybody that's watching this back home is that none of this has been very easy, and I'm not even anywhere where I want to be, and that I've had more hiccups and more problems than I would ever care to admit on a live camera anywhere. But I will tell you that it is never peaches and roses, and it is never beautiful. But in reality, the reason I've been able to talk to incredible people like you and be on stages like this is because I just didn't give up, and I just kept on doing it. And so like, no matter what you're going to do, it will fuck up at one point, and it will break and it will go bad and people will be pissed off at you. But as long as you just persevere through that and continue going, as long as what you think you're doing is actually the right thing that, to help other people, then you can come out on the other side a greater person, in the world I think can be greater because of it.
That's beautiful, man. And I have a bonus one that came to me. The biggest misconception you had about money prior to having it.
A second ago, I think I would say the fact that if I had some, other people had to have less. And I think the other thing, I still remember my dad. I told my dad I wanted to be a speaker on stage. And I'm ripping on my dad. I love my dad. But I remember I told him I would be a speaker on stage. And he said, son, you have to go work at a company for 5 to 10 years. And then once you're done with that and you actually have something going with your life, then you can go be a motivational speaker. And I think that one of the preconceived notions I had around money was that like you had to have 10, 20, 30 years of experience doing this one thing before someone would pay you money. When in reality, all you have to know is how to do something just a little bit more than somebody else, and that other person's gonna be willing to pay you how to do it.
I love it, man. Well, Ravi, thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people find out more if they want to get in touch with you, work with you, or follow you on social?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on here. I really do appreciate it. This has been awesome. And thank you for everybody that watched this. Hopefully you guys got some value out of it. I'm on all the social media channels. RaviAbuvala is my first and last name. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. And then if you guys are trying to start or scale a business online and you guys want to learn a little bit more about what we do and how we help people, you can get a whole 4.5-hour training where I just go so much more in depth on outbound prospecting, product market fit, all of that. You go to scalingwithsystems.com/few. I did a special one for you guys, and you guys will get instant access to it for free.
Very cool. And we'll put a link for that in the description below. Ravi, thank you so much for hopping on
Thanks
the
for
show,
having
guys.
me, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you guys for watching at home. And also, make sure to smash that subscribe button. Until next time, live strong, live with passion, and go follow Ravi so that you can scale your life and your business with systems as well. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for enjoying this episode on the Passionate Few podcast today. As always, I wanted to remind you to smash that subscribe button right now and turn on the post notification bell, because we have some of the most unbelievable and inspiring interviews coming up very soon, and I wouldn't want you to miss out. And also, don't forget, if you're an entrepreneur that would like to grow your business using YouTube, but you've always struggled and wondered how you could, well, you're in luck. Because if you check out the description below right now, you can now join my 100% free 7-Figure CEO Strategies Facebook group, where we uncover some of the strategies that are working on YouTube in present day, as well as allow you to be part of a group of like-minded entrepreneurs from around the world who are also interested in learning some of the best kept secrets for helping them grow their business with YouTube. Want to find out more? Simply click the link below, fill out the questions in the Facebook group, and I look forward to seeing you either there or in the next inspiring video.